My daughter stood on my porch, staring at me like I was a ghost. "Mom, you're not using oxygen. Your hair has color. You look 20 years younger." 6 months earlier, my own children handed me rusty keys to a condemned property in the mountains and $847. They couldn't look me in the eye. The nursing home they chose didn't allow pets. Our dog Scout would have to go to a shelter, and we would never do that. They really did send us here to die. But Scout wouldn't leave my side. And the night we arrived at that ruin of a house, something changed in him. He stood at the truck window for hours, staring at the mountain like he could see through darkness. Then he barked, demanded we follow him into the snow. I had maybe 12 hours of oxygen left. Every step up that slope felt like drowning. But Scout kept looking back, waiting, like he knew something I didn't. What he found behind those boulders, my grandfather had discovered 40 years before and buried with his secrets. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. The rain came down cold that October afternoon, the kind that soaks through fabric and settles in your bones. I sat in the truck with the passenger door open, plastic tube from my oxygen tank trailing to my nose, one hand resting on Scout's head. He pressed against my leg, warm and solid, watching Thomas stand in the driveway while strangers carried our life out in boxes. The dining table went first. Cherry wood, 43 years old. Thomas built it the year Veronica was born. Then the couch where I nursed 3 babies and later fell asleep during countless late-night study sessions while they finished homework at that same table. The bailiffs moved efficiently, rain dripping off their yellow slickers. They had done this before. Scout's ears flicked forward. A Tesla turned onto our street, silver and silent, too clean for this neighborhood. Cameron climbed out. Designer jacket zipped against the rain. His wife Amber stayed in the car, face turned toward her phone. She had not looked at me in 6 weeks, not since the foreclosure notice. My son walked over, holding a black umbrella, water beaded on the fabric without soaking in. I kept my hand on Scout. The oxygen hissed softly. "You can't keep living beyond your means," Cameron said. He glanced at Thomas, then back at me. "We talked about this." Thomas crossed his arms. Water dripped from his coat onto the driveway, spreading in dark circles. Cameron pulled a manila envelope from his jacket. Inside, glossy brochures. Pine Hills Senior Living, Assisted Care, Medication Management. The photos showed elderly people playing cards in a bright room with fake plants. "The staff is excellent," Cameron said. "They have full medical support. You need that, Mom. Your lungs, the oxygen." He paused. "They don't allow pets, you understand." Scout's body went tense under my palm. "We took a second mortgage for your MBA, I said. My voice came out flat. The oxygen made it hard to project, but I did not need volume. "Stanford, you said it would change your life." "It did, and I'm grateful." We sold my family's land for Veronica's law school, the land my grandmother left me. 80 acres in Oregon that had been in my family since 1923. All of it, so she would not have debt. Cameron shifted his weight. Rain tapped against his umbrella. We drained our retirement account to bail Marcus out when his startup failed. I watched my son's face. He looked tired, successful, but tired. $60,000. Every penny we saved. "I know you made sacrifices." 45 years, Cameron, and you will not let us keep our dog." A second car pulled up. Veronica, in her black Audi. She wore heels and carried a leather briefcase. My daughter, the attorney, whose education cost my inheritance. She walked over without greeting, opened the briefcase, pulled out papers. I had these drawn up, shelter intake forms for the dog, no-kill facility, very reputable. She held them toward Thomas. "I can handle the transport if you sign today." Thomas did not move. "Mom," Veronica's voice stayed professional, like she was explaining contract terms to a client. "You're oxygen dependent. Dad has severe arthritis. This is the practical solution. I destroyed my lungs in hotel laundries so you could become a lawyer, I thought. 22 years of night shifts breathing bleach and industrial solvents while you slept in your bedroom with the window open. This is your definition of humane. I said none of it. Words take breath I did not have. Scout pushed his nose against my hand. 8 years I had known this dog. He came to us the year everything fell apart, when I needed something to care for that would not break my heart. He had not left my side since the foreclosure notice arrived. Cameron cleared his throat. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a set of keys, rusty, old-fashioned. Look, grandfather's old homestead, up in the mountains. Property's been sitting in the family trust since night. He held them toward Thomas. Cabin's still standing. Mostly, consider it yours now. Thomas took the keys slowly, examining them. There's no power, Cameron continued. No cell service. Roads barely passable, but it's shelter. He paused, looking at Scout. Winter comes early up there. The unspoken part sat between us like a stone. That dog will not survive winter at elevation. He is old, just like you. Veronica closed her briefcase with a sharp click. This is not a solution, Cameron. This is avoidance. It's a choice, Thomas said. His voice came out quiet but firm. More than you gave us. They stood in the rain, my children who once climbed into my lap when they had nightmares, who I rocked and fed and taught to read. Cameron in his tech executive uniform, Veronica in her lawyer armor, both dry under their umbrellas while Thomas and I sat getting soaked. You should think carefully, Veronica said. Remote location, your health conditions, winter approaching. I strongly advise. Thank you for the keys, I said. They looked at me. I rarely interrupted Veronica. We will manage, I added. Cameron glanced at his wife in the Tesla. She had not moved. Amber used to call me every Sunday, back when Cameron was climbing the corporate ladder and needed family to seem stable. The calls stopped when the money did. There's a town 40 minutes from the property, Cameron said. Oak Ridge. Small, but it has a clinic. He pulled out his wallet, extracted 5 $20 bills, handed them to Thomas. For gas. $100. To make up for $60,000 we gave him. They left. Tesla first, Audi behind it. The bailiffs finished loading the truck. Thomas signed papers on a clipboard. Our landlord never appeared. He sent his lawyer instead. We had $847 in our checking account. 17 cans of soup in a cardboard box. A bag of Scout's kibble. 3 portable oxygen tanks. A 3-month supply of medications in white pharmacy bags, heart pills, anti-inflammatories, inhalers, diuretics. Thomas helped me into the truck properly, closed the door, walked around to the driver's side. His hands moved stiffly, arthritis making every motion deliberate. Scout settled between us on the bench seat. The engine turned over on the 3rd try. Thomas pulled away from the curb without looking back. I reached down, checked the oxygen gauge on the tank at my feet. Half full. Maybe 12 hours between the 3 tanks, less if I had to move around much. Scout pressed his weight against my leg, warm and solid and loyal. More loyal than our own children. Thomas drove north. Rain streaked the windshield. The wipers squeaked with each pass. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The headlights caught the sign just as dusk settled into full dark. Weathered wood, letters carved deep and painted white years ago. Pine Haven Valley, founded 1965. Someone had driven a nail through the corner to hold it to the post. Thomas slowed the truck. Beyond the sign, the road turned to gravel and dirt, rutted deep where rain had washed channels through it. Snow dusted the ground now, light and dry, the first of the season. Cold bit through the truck's broken heater. No town, just skeletal frames of buildings set back in the trees, rooflines sagging, windows empty as eye sockets, an abandoned homestead community that nobody bothered to tear down. Nature was doing it slowly instead. I pulled my coat tighter. The oxygen hissed in my nose. Thomas followed the rough track another quarter-mile. The headlights swept across a larger structure, log and stone construction, built solid once. The roof had collapsed on one side, leaving exposed beams pointed at the sky like broken ribs. Windows shattered, porch steps sagging into the ground. He cut the engine. Silence pressed in from all sides, broken only by the tick of cooling metal and my breathing through the oxygen tube. "They really did send us here to die," I said. Thomas's hands stayed on the steering wheel. He stared at the house for a long moment without speaking. Scout stood on the bench seat between us, body tense, nose working the air that seeped through the door cracks, his tail held straight out, not wagging, just balanced. "He's sensing something," Thomas said quietly. The passenger door latch still worked. Scout pushed past me the moment I cracked it open, leaping down into the snow before I could catch him. He hit the ground and immediately began moving, nose to the earth, circling outward from the truck in widening loops. "Scout," I called. My voice came out thin. No volume with these lungs. He ignored me, working his pattern with intense focus, checking, searching, establishing a perimeter like Thomas said military dogs did. Thomas came around, helped me down from the truck. My feet crunched in the light snow. Cold air hit my lungs and I gasped, doubling over. The oxygen hissed faster as I tried to pull in enough air. "Easy," Thomas said, steadying me. "Elevation. We're higher than home." I nodded, unable to speak. Each breath felt like dragging air through wet fabric. Scout completed his circuit, sat at the base of the porch steps, and looked at us. All clear, or as clear as this place was going to be. Thomas grabbed the flashlight from under the seat. We climbed the porch steps one at a time, testing each board before putting weight on it. The front door hung crooked on one hinge. Inside, the flashlight beam cut through darkness. Snow had drifted through the collapsed roof section, piling in one corner of what used to be a living room. Animal droppings scattered across the floor. Raccoons, maybe mice. The walls showed water damage, dark stains spreading down from where rain had gotten in. A wood stove sat in the center of the room, pipe disconnected and lying on its side. Thomas moved the flashlight slowly across the space. Every corner revealed more damage, more work, more impossibility. His shoulders dropped. He lowered the flashlight and just stood there in the dark. "Elena," his voice came out rough. "I failed you." I moved closer, though moving took effort at this elevation. 40 years I've been fixing things," he continued. "Built houses, rebuilt engines. But this," he gestured at the collapsed roof, the broken stove, the snow inside what should be shelter. Maybe they were right. Maybe bringing Scout here was cruel. I took his hand. The arthritis had his fingers curled slightly, unable to fully straighten anymore. "Thomas Morrison," I said his full name, the way I did when our children were small and needed to pay attention. "We survived the recession when you lost your job for 6 months, raised 3 children on wages and never missed a meal, buried our parents with dignity when we could barely afford the funerals." He looked at me in the dim light. "The 3 of us aren't done yet," I said. A low growl cut through the silence. Scout stood rigid in the doorway, staring into the darkness beyond the house. Not aggressive, alert, focused on something we couldn't see. "What is it?" Thomas whispered. Scout's growl stopped. He looked back at us, then at the darkness, then back again. The message was clear. "Follow." He took off into the night. Thomas and I looked at each other. Then Thomas grabbed the flashlight and we followed. Scout moved with purpose through the snow, not running but pulling ahead, checking back to make sure we followed. 20 yards from the house, maybe more. Hard to tell in the dark. The flashlight beam bounced as Thomas walked, making shadows leap. Scout stopped at what looked like a mound of earth covered in dead grass and snow. He began digging, paws throwing dirt and snow backwards. Then he barked once, sharp, insistent. Thomas aimed the flashlight at the spot, a wooden door set into the ground at an angle. Root cellar. The door had a metal ring for a handle. Thomas pulled. It took both hands and all his weight, but the door scraped open on frozen hinges, revealing stone steps leading down into blackness. Cool air drifted up, not freezing, warmer than outside, and dry. Thomas went first with the flashlight. I followed, one hand on Scout's back for balance. The oxygen tank hung heavy from its strap across my shoulder. The cellar opened wider than I expected. Stone walls, maybe 8 feet across. Shelves lined one side, filled with mason jars. Their contents looked ancient, but the seals appeared intact. The other side held stacked firewood, cut and dried decades ago but protected from weather. Hand tools hung on pegs, and in the corner, a propane heater, the kind that runs on small tanks. Thomas moved the flashlight to the tanks beside the heater, 2 of them, full by their weight when he lifted one. Carved into the stone wall above the heater, someone had scratched letters deep into the surface. "Duem," said Grandfather William, Thomas said softly. He prepared for winter. I looked at the preserved jars, the firewood, the tools, the propane. 40 years this cellar had sat waiting. Cameron said the property had been in the family trust since the year Grandfather William died. He left this here, on purpose. Scout sat at the base of the stairs, looking up at us. His expression, if a dog could have such a thing, appeared almost smug. Thomas laughed. It came out strangled, close to a sob. "That dog just saved our lives." We hauled the propane heater up the steps, both tanks, an armload of firewood. Scout led us back to the truck. Thomas set up the heater in the truck bed under the camper shell, vented it through a gap, fired it up. The small space filled with warmth. I climbed into the truck cab, Scout between us on the bench seat like always. Thomas got in the driver's side and pulled the door shut. Heat from the back seeped forward slowly. My hands began to thaw. I checked the oxygen gauge, half empty now. 1 full tank left, plus this one. Not enough to be careless with. Thomas pulled an old wool blanket from behind the seat, tucked it around my shoulders. Scout settled his weight against my leg. His body heat soaked through my coat. Outside, snow fell heavier now, covering the ruins of Pinehaven Valley, covering the broken house that was supposed to be our last stop. But we weren't in that house. We were in the truck with propane heat and a root cellar full of supplies that nobody knew existed. "Maybe there nothing is everything we need," I said. Thomas was already asleep, head back against the seat, breathing deep. The first solid sleep in weeks. I put my hand on Scout's head. His ears flicked at my touch, but he didn't open his eyes. Tomorrow we would figure out the house. Tonight we survived. That was enough. Dawn came cold and clear. I woke to find Scout sitting upright on the bench seat, nose pressed to the window glass, staring at the mountainside above the ruined house. He had not moved from that position. His tail stayed still, body tense with focus. The storm had passed during the night. Everything outside looked scrubbed clean, snow bright in the early light. The propane heater in the truck bed still hummed, keeping the cab barely warm enough. I reached for the oxygen tank at my feet. The gauge needle sat just above the red zone, nearly empty. 1 full tank left in the back, nothing more. I did the math without wanting to. Maybe 6 hours total between what remained in this tank and the last one. Less if I moved around. But something felt different. I drew a breath without the tube, testing. The air came in. Not easy, not like it used to be before the laundries destroyed my lungs, but easier than yesterday. The tightness in my chest had loosened a fraction. I fitted the cannula back in place anyway. 6 hours was 6 hours. Scout whined softly, eyes never leaving the mountain. Thomas stirred beside me, joints creaking as he shifted. "He's been like that for an hour," he said quietly. "I've been watching him." Scout pawed at the window, once, twice, claws clicking on glass. "He wants us to follow," Thomas said. I looked at the gauge again, at the mountain, at Scout's unwavering focus on something I could not see. We should conserve oxygen, I said. Stay put. Figure out the house. Scout turned his head, looked directly at me, then back at the mountain. The message was clear. This matters more. I opened the truck door. The cold hit hard and immediate. I gasped, felt my lungs seize, then slowly release. Scout leaped down into the snow before I could catch him. But he did not run ahead. He planted himself beside the truck, waiting, watching me with those amber eyes. "I'm coming," I told him. Thomas helped me down. My legs shook from more than cold. Altitude and lack of oxygen made everything harder. The tank hung heavy across my shoulder, tube trailing to my nose. Scout moved forward 10 feet, stopped, looked back. We followed. He led us away from the house, up the slope into the trees. The grade was not steep, but every step took effort. My breath came in short pulls despite the oxygen. Thomas stayed close, one hand ready to steady me. Scout moved ahead in careful increments, always checking, always waiting. 5 minutes in, I had to stop. Leaned against a pine trunk, gasping. The hiss of oxygen seemed loud in the quiet forest. Scout sat in the snow, patient. "This is foolish," I said between breaths. "I'm running out." Scout stood, took 3 steps forward, sat again, waited. I pushed off the tree. We climbed for what felt like an hour, but was probably 15 minutes. Every few yards I stopped, lungs screaming, legs trembling. Thomas said nothing, just stayed beside me, his arthritic hands ready to catch me if I fell. The oxygen gauge needle dropped into the red zone. Scout suddenly barked, sharp and urgent. He disappeared behind a cluster of large boulders ahead. Thomas and I looked at each other. I nodded. We kept climbing. We rounded the boulders and stopped. A pool of water, maybe 30 feet across, perfectly circular. Steam rose from the surface in steady wisps that caught the morning light. The water was crystal clear, so clear I could see every stone on the bottom. The air above it shimmered with heat. "Hot spring," I said. The words came out breathy, weak, geothermal, mineral-rich. Scout stood at the water's edge, digging frantically in the earth beside a flat stone. Dirt and snow flew backwards between his legs. Thomas knelt beside him. Scout's digging had exposed the corner of something metal. Thomas pulled. A box emerged, maybe 10 inches square, made of steel. Rust had eaten at the edges, but the lid still fit tight. The top was engraved. W. M. Morrison, 19. Thomas worked the lid open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, a leather journal, geological survey maps, edges yellowed, letters in careful handwriting, and a photograph. I took the photo with shaking hands. A man, maybe 40 years old, lean and weathered, kneeling beside this same pool. Beside him sat a Border Collie with distinctive markings, black and white and tan. The dog looked remarkably like Scout, almost identical. I turned the photo over. Someone had written on the back in pencil, "God's pharmacy heals what medicine cannot. Sage found it first, like dogs always do. WM9. Sage, Grandfather William's dog." Scout sat beside me, watching, waiting for me to understand. I looked at the steaming water, at Scout, at the photo of his ancestor beside this same spring 4 decades ago. My chest hurt. The oxygen was not enough. I sat down heavily on the flat stone, pulled the cannula from my nose, and without thinking about it, without planning, I unlaced my shoes and peeled off my socks. The water was hot but not scalding. I lowered my feet in slowly. Heat radiated up my calves into my knees. The mineral smell was strong, slightly sulfurous, but not unpleasant. Something changed. The band around my chest loosened, not suddenly, not like a miracle in a story, but like ice melting in spring. Gradual but undeniable. I drew a breath, then another, deeper this time. The air filled spaces that had been closed for years. "Thomas," I said. My voice came out stronger. "Put your hands in." He knelt, submerged his arthritic hands to the wrists. His eyes widened. "It feels like it's reaching inside me," I said, loosening things that have been locked tight for years. We stayed there while the sun climbed higher. Scout lay beside the pool, head on his paws, eyes half closed, content. His job was done. The walk back down should have been harder. I had been climbing for nearly an hour on depleted oxygen, but my legs felt steadier. My breathing came easier, deeper, more rhythmic. Halfway down, I removed the cannula completely, hooked it over the tank strap. I could breathe. Not perfectly, not like before the laundries, but better than I had in 5 years. Thomas flexed his hands as we walked, opening and closing his fingers. The movement looked smoother, less painful. Back at the truck, Thomas fired up the propane stove he had salvaged from the cellar. We ate cold soup from cans and stale crackers. Neither of us spoke much. Words felt inadequate. That night, after dark, I sat in the truck cab with the journal by flashlight while Thomas slept. Scout lay across both our feet, warm weight anchoring us. The journal entries were brief, dated across several years. Grandfather William had been a surveyor, methodical and precise. He documented everything. One entry, dated July 1985, read, 4 springs total on this property, each one different. North Spring for joints and bones, Eastern Cascade for skin and open wounds. This main pool for breathing, heart, panic. 4th one I call clarity, tucked in the cave system, for what it does to the mind. Sage knows which spring each person needs. She circles them first, assessing, then leads them to the right water. I don't understand it, but I trust it. Some knowledge runs deeper than human understanding. I looked down at Scout, solid and warm across our feet. 4 springs. Scout had led me to the one I needed most. I closed the journal and turned off the flashlight. Outside, stars burned cold and bright above Pinehaven Valley. Inside the truck, the 3 of us slept without fear for the first time in months. 3 weeks had passed since Scout led me to the spring. Mid-November now, and I walked to the pool every morning without the oxygen tank. Left it sitting in the truck cab, gauge still showing half full on the last tank. I had not needed it in 12 days. The walk that first took me 20 minutes of gasping and stopping now took 7. My lungs still carried scars from 22 years of industrial chemicals, but the springs were doing what medicine never could. Breathing came easier each day, deeper, more natural. Thomas stood on the porch he was rebuilding, hammer in one hand, examining a board he had just cut. His movements looked smoother, less hesitation between actions. "When did you last take your arthritis medication?" I asked. He set down the hammer, flexed his hands, opened and closed his fingers slowly, testing. 3 days, maybe 4. He rotated his shoulder, the one that used to lock up every morning. Pain's still there, but duller, like it's happening to someone else's body. Scout bounded past, chasing nothing in particular, just running because he could. His muzzle showed more black than gray now, eyes bright and clear. He moved like a younger dog, all energy and purpose. Over those 3 weeks, Scout had led us to the other springs Grandfather's journal described. North Spring, tucked in a clearing ringed by old-growth pines. Water slightly cooler than the main pool, different mineral content. Thomas soaked his hands there twice a day. Eastern Cascade, hidden behind a tumble of moss-covered rocks. Clear water flowing over reddish stones into a shallow pool. My eczema scars faded after the first week of washing there. The 4th spring took longest to find. Scout kept circling back to the same rocky outcrop, whining, pawing at stone. Thomas finally noticed a gap between boulders, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Inside, a small cave system opened up. The spring sat in the farthest chamber. Tiny pool, maybe 4 feet across, black stones lining the bottom. Water so clear it looked like glass. No steam, despite being warm to the touch. Scout lay down beside it, head on his paws, body blocking the path. When Thomas tried to step closer, Scout growled, low and serious. "This one is different," I said. "Sacred, to be respected." We marked it in the journal but left it alone. Clarity Spring. Grandfather had called it, for what it does to the mind. Marcus showed up on day 25, drove his beat-up Honda up the rough road, parked it crooked near the house. He stood by his car for a long time before walking over. "Mom, Dad." He looked at the ground. "I'm sorry for not helping, for going along with Cameron." Thomas kept working on the porch boards, did not look up. "I know, sorry doesn't fix anything," Marcus continued. "But I saw Cameron had those solar panels in his garage, from his lake house renovation. I thought maybe you could use them, if you still have power issues." Thomas finally looked at him. "You know how to wire solar?" "Engineering degree." Before I dropped out, Marcus gave a weak smile. "I remember some things." They worked together for 3 days. Marcus staying in town, driving up each morning, leaving before dark. Barely spoke except about voltage and circuits. But he wired the system properly, ran cables, mounted panels on the section of roof Thomas had repaired. When it was done, we had electricity, lights, a way to charge tools. Marcus left on the 3rd evening. Quick hug, awkward, and he was gone. Thomas watched his taillights disappear down the mountain. Scout, meanwhile, had become our supply chain. He would disappear for hours, then bark until we followed. Led us to a lumber cache hidden under rotting tarps behind a collapsed outbuilding. Intact windows stacked in the old barn, glass somehow unbroken after 40 years. Copper piping in the cellar we had missed the first time. Everything we needed, Scout found. "He knows this property better than we do," Thomas said one afternoon, watching Scout dig up a toolbox of vintage wrenches. "Or he's reading Grandfather's mind from beyond the grave." I preferred to think Scout was simply remarkable, easier to accept than ghosts. My body continued healing. The swelling in my ankles disappeared completely. I could make fists without pain shooting through my knuckles. The skin lesions on my hands from chemical burns faded to faint pink marks. Thomas rebuilt the house piece by piece. Salvaged windows went in, sealed tight. New roof sections covered the collapsed areas. The porch became solid again. No more testing boards before stepping. We built simple terraces around each spring using stones Scout helped us find. Walking paths between them. Small changing shelters from old lumber. I started a garden using runoff from the springs for irrigation. Seeds I found in the cellar, stored in glass jars, decades old. Half of them sprouted anyway. The mineral-rich water made things grow faster, stronger. Lettuce in November, carrots thick as my wrist after 2 weeks. One morning, digging through Grandfather's papers in the cellar, I found a legal document, family trust paperwork. The property had been held in trust since 1985, transferring to any family member in need upon request to trustee. The trustee signature line showed Cameron's name, dated 5 years ago. I carried it up to show Thomas. He read it twice, jaw tight. "Cameron knew," I said. "He's been executor this whole time. Could have helped us years ago, before the foreclosure, before we lost everything." Thomas folded the paper carefully, put it in his shirt pocket, said nothing, but his hands shook slightly, not from arthritis. Money stayed tight. We had maybe 300 left of the original 847. Thomas started taking carpentry jobs in Oak Ridge, the town 40 minutes down the mountain. Small jobs, repairs, deck building. He traded work for supplies more often than cash. I sold vegetables at the farmer's market on Saturdays. Lettuce, carrots, herbs that grew impossibly fast. People paid well for organic produce in November. We were not rich, but we were not starving. Surviving. One day at a time. The first stranger appeared on day 34. A woman, maybe 50, driving a pickup truck with farming equipment logos. She parked near the house, climbed out slowly, one hand pressed to her temple. Scout's ears went forward. He trotted over, began his circling assessment. Around her once, twice, 3 times. Nose working, reading something I could not see. Then he sat, looked at me, looked toward the path leading to the main pool. The woman watched him, confused. "I'm Claire Torres," she said. "I farm about 15 miles from here. Jacob, my husband, He heard from someone who heard from someone that there might be healing springs up here. She winced. I've had migraines for 30 years. Doctors can't do anything more. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm desperate. Scout stood, walked 3 steps toward the path, stopped, looked back at her. Follow him, I said. 20 minutes later, Claire sat at the edge of the main pool with her feet in the water, crying. Not from pain, from relief. 30 years, she whispered. First time in 30 years the pressure's gone. She looked at me. What is this place? I sat down beside her. Scout settled between us, content. We're still figuring that out, I said. That night, I wrote in grandfather's journal by lamplight. Electric light now, thanks to Marcus. Scout asleep across mine and Thomas's feet. The house weather-tight and warm. Day 42. Thomas sleeps without pain medication. My oxygen concentrator sits unused in the truck, a relic of who I was. Scout grows younger before our eyes, as if the springs work on him too. The waters heal bodies, but I think purpose heals spirits, and we finally understand what we're supposed to do here. Spring arrived suddenly in late April. Snow retreated overnight, revealing meadows I had not known existed. Wildflowers erupted across the property in waves of color. Lupine, Indian paintbrush, avalanche lilies. 6 months since we arrived with $847 and 3 oxygen tanks. The homestead looked nothing like the ruin we first saw. Weather-tight cabin with salvaged windows that actually closed. Functional terraces around each spring. Stone paths worn smooth by feet. My garden sprawled across what used to be wilderness, fed by mineral-rich spring runoff. Tomatoes in late April, lettuce heads the size of dinner plates, carrots that split the earth as they grew. Thomas and I looked different too. People who came to the springs noticed it first, the way their eyes widened before they caught themselves. Thomas moved like a man of 50, not 69. No more arthritis stoop. My hair had regained some darkness at the roots. Skin clear. I could run if I needed to. Run. Scout barely showed gray anymore. His muzzle had darkened to match his youth. Eyes bright with intelligence and energy that seemed boundless. Dr. Leonard Graves arrived on a Tuesday, sent by Claire Torres. Tall man, late 50s, careful movements that spoke of chronic pain. He climbed from his truck slowly, studying the property with a veterinarian's assessment eyes. Scout approached, began his diagnostic circle. 3 rotations, nose working. Then he sat, looked at me, and turned his gaze toward the path leading to the North Spring. Your dog is staring at me, Dr. Graves said. He wants you to follow, I replied. The skepticism on his face was familiar. I had seen it on Claire, on the others who came. But he followed Scout anyway. At the North Spring, Dr. Graves hesitated only a moment before submerging his swollen hands in the water. I watched his expression change. Surprise, disbelief, relief. Rheumatoid arthritis, he said quietly. 20 years. Ended my surgical practice 2 years ago. Couldn't trust my hands anymore. He came back 3 times that week. By the 3rd visit, he could manipulate small instruments again, demonstrating with a pen he pulled from his pocket. His fingers moved with precision, I recognized from my own restored hands. That dog, Dr. Graves said, watching Scout guide an elderly man toward the eastern cascade. He's not guessing. I've been observing. The circling pattern corresponds to diagnostic assessment. He's reading body language, scent markers, breathing patterns. Then he matches the person to the correct spring. He's never wrong. Word had spread carefully through the local community. People came now, maybe 2 or 3 a week. Always discreet, always by referral. We asked for sliding scale contributions. Some paid, some traded goods, some had nothing, and we turned no one away. A small network of healed people who protected the secret because they understood its value. Scout greeted each visitor the same way. Circle, assess, guide. A teenager with panic attacks that started after a car accident. Scout led him to Clarity Spring, then lay beside him during treatments. Solid warmth against shaking hands. The boy came 5 times, said it was the first panic-free week he had in 8 months. Then the animals started coming. A fox first, dragging one hind leg. Scout herded it gently to the eastern cascade, stood guard while it lapped water and soaked its paw. The fox returned 3 times, then disappeared, walking normally. A deer with labored breathing appeared at dawn. Scout led it to the main pool, positioned himself between it and us, keeping the deer calm. It drank, rested, breathed easier. An eagle with a broken wing landed in the meadow. Scout approached carefully, circled once, then simply lay near it until I could examine the wing. Broken but healing, Scout led it to the eastern pool. The eagle returned for a week, wings gaining strength each day. "He's a healer," Dr. Graves said, watching Scout work, "not just a guide. There's intelligence here we don't understand. Ancient knowledge, maybe, something deeper than training." I kept detailed records, ailments, which spring, treatment duration, outcomes, teacher habits. I could not break. The data was remarkable. Everyone improved. Not always cured, but improved, sometimes dramatically. One evening, Dr. Graves brought papers to the cabin. "Word will spread," he said. "You need legal structure, protection." A local attorney named Brennan had been one of Scout's visitors. Chronic back pain that melted away at the North Spring. He helped us establish an informal land trust at no charge. Elena Morrison, Thomas Morrison, Leonard Graves as trustees. The springs protected, the property secured. "Proper nonprofit paperwork will take months," Brennan explained, "but core protections are in place. No one can develop this land. No one can take the springs." That night, Scout did something strange. He sat at the edge of the porch, staring into the dark forest for hours, ears forward, body alert. I heard distant barking, faint and far away. Scout whined softly, an unusual sound from him. "What is it?" I asked. He looked at me, then back at the forest. Whatever he sensed, he was not ready to show me yet. I sat on the porch steps with my sketchbook, drawing the wild flowers that had transformed the meadow. Thomas worked by lamplight inside, planning an expansion to handle more visitors safely. Dr. Graves had gone home, promising to return with better documentation tools. Our children saw us as burdens to discard, broken things to warehouse until we died quietly. Now strangers drove hours up rough mountain roads to receive what we offered. Scout had chosen this path, led us here step by step. We were just learning to follow. The stars came out bright and cold. Scout finally left his post, settled beside me on the steps. I put my hand on his head, felt the vitality humming under his fur. "What's out there?" I asked him. He closed his eyes, content to wait. Scout stopped mid-step on the path to the North Spring, head swiveling toward the access road. His body went rigid, ears forward, low growl building in his chest. I had never heard him growl at approaching visitors before. "Someone's coming," Thomas said from the porch. He set down his hammer. The Tesla appeared first, silver paint streaked with mud, navigating the rough road like it was personally offended by dirt. Cameron climbed out in athletic wear that probably cost more than our monthly food budget. He stood beside the car, staring at the property, at the rebuilt house, at Thomas and me. "Dad, Mom." He walked closer slowly. "Is that really you?" Veronica's Audi pulled up behind him, then Marcus's Honda. Amber stayed in the Tesla, fingers moving across her phone screen. All 3 of my children stood in our yard for the first time since the foreclosure. Scout positioned himself between them and us, growling continuously now, hackles raised. "Scout, quiet," I said. He stopped growling but did not move, did not relax. Veronica climbed the porch steps, studying my face like I was evidence in a case. "Mom, you're not using oxygen. Your hair has color again. You look 20 years younger." "Mountain air agrees with us," I said. Thomas crossed his arms. "Why are you here?" Cameron glanced at his siblings, then back at us. "We've been hearing stories, miraculous healing springs, elderly couple running some kind of sanctuary, remarkable therapy dog." He looked at Scout, sounded familiar. Word spreading, Veronica added. People talking in Oak Ridge. Online forums about alternative healing. Amber finally emerged from the Tesla, phone in hand. Scouts already getting mentioned on social media. Healing dog in the mountains. It's very on brand right now. Cameron's executive voice kicked in. With proper development, professional management, we could scale this. Marketing Scout's abilities alone could generate substantial revenue. We could build a whole brand, Amber said, eyes bright with the possibility. Wellness retreats, documentary series, book deals. Something cold settled in my stomach, the same cold I felt watching bailiffs carry away our furniture. Where were you when I couldn't breathe? My voice came out quiet, controlled. When we had $847 and nowhere to go? When we thought we'd lose Scout? Cameron opened his mouth, closed it. Thomas reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out folded papers. Property's been transferred to a land trust. Elena, myself, and Dr. Leonard Graves as trustees. All mineral and water rights protected in perpetuity. Dr. Graves appeared from the path leading to the main pool, probably heard the cars. He climbed the porch steps, stood beside Thomas. Medical authority in worn jeans and a flannel shirt. Trust structure is legally sound. The springs are protected. You had time to arrange all this but couldn't call us? Cameron asked. You gave us keys to property you controlled for years, I said. You never called either, not until you heard something valuable here. The silence stretched. Marcus looked at the ground. Veronica's jaw tightened. Cameron's executive confidence cracked slightly. Dr. Graves cleared his throat. Perhaps you should experience the springs before discussing business. Scout, what do you think? Scout's ears flicked. He looked at Dr. Graves, then at the children. After a long moment, he approached Marcus, began his diagnostic circle. Slow, thorough. Marcus stood still, watching the dog with something like wonder. Scout finished his assessment, then walked directly toward the path leading to Clarity Spring. Looked back at Marcus once. How does he know? Marcus whispered. Follow him, I said. Scout returned, circled Veronica next. She tried to hide her wince as she shifted weight, but I saw it, the same pain I used to carry in my joints. Scout led her toward the North Spring without hesitation. Then Scout approached Cameron, sat down 3 feet away, stared, body language clear, judgment reserved. Scout's waiting, I said. Waiting to see if you're here for healing or profit. Cameron stared back at the dog. Neither moved. Scout suddenly whirled, barking sharp and urgent at the ridgeline above the property. His whole body tensed, focused on something beyond what we could see. The air felt heavier, pressure building. Dr. Graves looked at the sky. He's sensing weather, significant storm system coming. How soon? Thomas asked. With that reaction, Dr. Graves studied Scout, who continued barking at the mountains. Hours, maybe less. The wind picked up. Clouds I had not noticed before moved in fast, dark and low. Cameron looked at his Tesla, at the rough road he had barely navigated on the way up. We should leave, get ahead of it. You won't make it, Thomas said flatly. Storm hits that road, you'll be trapped halfway down, or worse. Then what do you suggest? Veronica asked, lawyer voice kicking in. I looked at Thomas, at Dr. Graves, at my 3 children who had abandoned us 6 months ago and now stood on our porch because they smelled opportunity. You stay, I said. Storm it out here, with us. Mom, Cameron started. The 3 of you together, with us, for the first time since you put us in that truck. I met each of their eyes. Scout will protect you, same as he protects everyone who comes here, because that's what he does, even if you don't deserve it. Thunder rolled down from the mountains. Scout stopped barking, came to sit beside me, pressed against my leg. The storm was coming, and my children were about to learn what it meant to survive. The storm hit 2 hours after sunset. Rain came down in sheets, lightning turning night to day in strobing flashes. Wind howled through the trees like something alive and angry. We huddled in the cabin Thomas had rebuilt. Weathertight. Thank everything. Cameron and Amber took the bedroom. Veronica and Marcus spread sleeping bags in the loft. Dr. Graves made a bed on the couch. Thomas and I stayed in our room with Scout between us. Scout would not settle. He moved from window to window, nose pressed to glass, body tense. He's monitoring, Thomas whispered. Midnight. Scout bolted upright, pawing at the door, barking so hard his whole body shook. Thomas grabbed his jacket. I followed. So did Marcus, still half asleep. Outside was chaos, rain like needles. Scout took off toward the solar array, running flat out. Thomas and Marcus chased him with flashlights bouncing. I saw it when lightning flashed. Water cascading down the mountain, a wall of mud and debris heading straight for the panels. Thomas and Marcus reached the array seconds before the flood hit, disconnected cables, hauled panels to higher ground. Scout barked directions, somehow knowing which equipment mattered most. They made it back soaked and shaking, but the power stayed on. Scout did not stop, immediately alert to the next threat, barking at the garden. Marcus went without being asked. Thomas showed him how to divert the flow using stones and salvaged lumber, build channels, redirect water away from vulnerable areas. I remember this, Marcus said, voice rough. You taught me when I was 12, building drainage for the deck. They worked together in the rain, father and son, side by side for the first time in years. All night, Scout warned us. Storage shed flooding, chicken coop threatened, stone terrace weakening. We worked in shifts, following Scout's alerts, saving what we had built. By dawn, exhausted and soaked, we gathered in the cabin. Marcus stared at Scout with something like awe. That dog saved this entire place. He knew exactly where every weakness was. The storm lasted 4 days. Then the road damage trapped us. County said 2 weeks minimum before repairs finished. 17 days total. Cut off from everything. Power stretched thin beyond what the solar panels could provide. Rationed food. Melted snow for extra water. Forced intimacy with no escape. A week in, I realized something startling. My emergency heart medication sat untouched in my bag. I had not needed it once since arriving at the property months ago. Not during the climb to the spring. Not during the storm. Not during the hard physical work. Cameron found me checking my pulse one morning. Mom, are you okay? Should we try to get you out for a checkup? Scout appeared at my side, walked to the container of breath spring water we kept in the kitchen, sat beside it, looked at me with those knowing eyes. Dr. Graves pulled out his portable equipment. Let me check your vitals. He monitored blood pressure, pulse, listened to my heart. Remarkable. Better readings than your medical chart from 6 months ago showed, even with medication. The springs, I said simply. I'm documenting everything, Dr. Graves said. This needs proper medical study, but I can't argue with what I'm seeing. Cameron watched every reading, his executive certainty about what was impossible, crumbling piece by piece. The storm forced us together in ways months of visits never could. Marcus worked with Thomas every day, repairing storm damage, rebuilding what washed away. His hands remembered skills I thought he had forgotten. He stayed present, focused, sober in a way that felt solid, not fragile. Veronica discovered she had an eye for stonework, spent hours restoring the terrace, finding patterns in the stones, creating something beautiful from debris. Cameron struggled most. No cell service, no control, no way to manage or fix or optimize. Primitive conditions stripped away his executive armor, left him pacing and anxious. One night, Marcus found me on the porch. Rain had finally stopped. 5 years sober, he said, but I've been barely holding on, white-knuckling it every day. He looked toward the path leading to Clarity Spring. That water is the first time I've felt actually peaceful, not just not drinking, actually at peace. Scout brought us lost hikers twice, both times appearing at the door with strangers in tow, hypothermic and disoriented. We fed them, warmed them, sent them on their way when roads cleared. Day 12, Scout finally approached Cameron, circled him once, led him to the main pool. Cameron came back an hour later, face pale. Found me in the kitchen. Irregular heartbeat, chest pain. Cardiologist has been concerned for months. His voice cracked. I came here thinking I could help you. Control something. I'm terrified of dying and losing control of everything. So you tried to control us instead, I said. He nodded, could not look at me. The springs don't respond to control, I told him. They respond to need. Scout knows the difference. Day 17, we heard engines. County rescue trucks navigating the repaired road. 2 workers climbed out, expecting to find disaster. Found instead a thriving household. Healthy people working together. Gardens already being replanted. Solar power running efficiently. You folks did better than town did, one rescuer said, shaking his head. Half of Oak Ridge lost power for 10 days. You seem fine. I looked at Thomas, at Scout sitting between us, at our 3 children who had been forced to remember how to be family. We are, I said. We're fine. 2 weeks after the storm cleared, we gathered on the rebuilt porch. Late May sunshine, warm after weeks of rain. Cameron stood at the railing, looking out over the property like he was seeing it for the first time. I've been thinking about this place, he said, not as a business opportunity, as a sanctuary, a real sanctuary. He turned to face us. The executive armor was gone, just my son, tired and humbled. You created this. You understand its soul. We provide support, logistics, protection, but the heart remains yours. Scout approached him slowly, began his diagnostic circle, extended, thorough, searching. Then he sat directly in front of Cameron, eyes locked on his face. Neither moved for a long moment. Scout gave a soft woof, returned to my side. Scout's reserving final judgment, Dr. Graves said quietly, waiting to see if actions match intentions. Veronica sat forward, lawyer voice softened by weeks of working with stone and water. I can redirect my practice. Environmental protection, elder rights, land conservation, things that actually matter. Marcus looked at Thomas. I'd like to stay, build a cabin on the property, learn from you, actually be present for once. You remember anything I taught you? Thomas asked. More than you know, Marcus said. I just forgot I remembered. 6 months later, November came around again. 1 full year since Cameron handed us rusty keys and $847. 1 year since we thought we were being sent to die. The sanctuary operated small but sustainable. Word spread carefully through networks of healed people. Marcus lived in the cabin he built with Thomas's guidance, worked beside his father every day. His sobriety was solid now, rooted in something deeper than willpower. Veronica visited monthly, handled pro bono legal work for us, and 3 other conservation projects. Cameron brought teenagers from his company twice a month, teaching them about service instead of profit. His heart condition had stabilized. My granddaughter Emma stood at the main pool, watching Scout assess a new visitor. Grandma, how does Scout always know what's wrong with people? He listens with more than ears, I told her. Observes with more than eyes, a skill most humans have forgotten. Marcus returned from a town meeting that afternoon, truck engine cutting off near the house. He climbed out carrying something wrapped in his jacket. A puppy, Border Collie, maybe 8 weeks old, black and white and tan markings that looked eerily familiar. Found her abandoned behind the community center, Marcus said. Someone just left her there. But look at her markings. Dr. Graves examined the puppy with gentle hands. If I didn't know better, I'd say she's related to Scout. Coloring, bone structure, even the way she holds her head. I pulled out grandfather's journal, found the passage I remembered. Sage's lines scattered when I passed the property to the family trust, but bloodlines run deep in these mountains. One will return when the springs need protecting again. Scout approached the puppy with slow dignity. He was 9 now, still vibrant and strong, but showing his age in subtle ways. The puppy watched him with unusual focus, then mimicked his posture exactly, sat when he sat, tilted her head when he tilted his. Scout won't live forever, Dr. Graves said quietly. Perhaps this ensures continuity of whatever gift he carries. Scout began his tour, led the puppy to each spring, pausing at each one, to the terraces, the paths, the changing shelters, teaching. The puppy followed every step, attentive in ways puppies rarely are. They returned to the porch as twilight settled. The puppy curled up beside Scout, both of them gazing out over the sanctuary. Lights glowed in Marcus's cabin. Voices drifted up from visitors at the eastern cascade. 40 years ago, Grandfather William discovered these springs, I said. Sage showed him. Thomas and I were discarded here to die. Scout showed us how to live. Now this puppy arrives exactly when needed. Our children threw us away like broken furniture, Thomas said. This mountain showed we still had purpose. Cameron stood in the doorway behind us. I had not heard him approach. His voice came out thick. We threw away the best thing we had. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to see it. I met his eyes. You're here now. That's what matters. A car pulled up the access road. Evening appointment. Scout and the puppy both went alert. Scout looked at the puppy. At me. Back at the puppy. The puppy stood. Walked toward the visitor's car. Scout followed close behind, watching. The puppy began to circle the visitor, movements hesitant but methodical. She completed one circle, two, stopped, looked back at Scout. Scout gave a soft woof. Approval. The puppy led the visitor toward the North Spring without hesitation. I put my hand on Scout's head, felt the warmth, the intelligence, the depth of loyalty that had saved us in more ways than I could count. The dog who showed more loyalty than our children, more wisdom than doctors, more healing than medicine, our true family. And now his legacy continued. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you believe animals can sense things about our health that we can't? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like mine.